Thank you so much for the invitation. It's wonderful to be here. My talk is on proactive contract design. And for showing what proactive means in this context, I have this little friend. I wonder if the camera is going to show him. Yes? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. This is my little friend. He's not a proactive preventive lawyer. He's a litigating lawyer and he speaks proper English. He says, okay, this is an outrage. He says, my client is innocent. And then he says, I'll see you in court. That's what he's famous for. And then he says, okay, and then he keeps repeating this. So he's not a proactive preventive lawyer. Thanks. We can let the picture go. Thank you. And here's my agenda. A little bit of an introduction. And then what is it that we're talking about? This was, by the way, the uninvited speaker, the pocket lawyer. I want to do it again. I am based in Helsinki. My universities, Vaasa and Rovaniemi, are on the map. And then I have the place where we are now at and Varese. And why would I have Varese? I have Varese because I have a partner in crime. Stefania Passera and myself have been doing lots of things together, practical things and also things in research. Stefania is an Italian designer, and we have, among other things, created the World CC Contract Design Pattern Library, which I'm going to mention and show some examples of. This is our PhD dissertations. The beautiful cover of mine, which I'm going to dedicate to Olympia soon, is by Stefania. Both of us wrote our dissertations on contracts. Now, what are contracts? When you think of contracts, what do you see in your mind? Do you picture of? Do you see a legal act, offer and acceptance? Is it party-made law that you're thinking about, a source of legally binding obligations, or evidence? This is what my pocket lawyer thinks about. Evidence in court, course of action and remedies. Many business people think of dense legal documents written by lawyers for other lawyers. Dan Macmillan, Paul Goodall, I'm citing them here. They say only lawyers and other trouble-oriented folk look on contracts primarily as a source of trouble and disputation, rather than a way of getting things done. So I wonder who we write our contracts for. The pocket lawyers, really, they get all the attention in media and television shows, and it's all about winning. Now, for a business in-house counsel, it's not about winning and losing. It's about win-win that we aim at. So we cannot be trouble-oriented only. And here's one of my very early pictures of contracts. A contract elephant, showing the various things that people think about when you say the word contract. A contract law professor might think of things different from an in-house counsel. For my in-house counsel role, it's a risk management tool, it's an opportunity management tool. The salesman may think it's a necessary evil, something that gets in the way of doing business. So all of these things, and I'm sure you're familiar with the story of the blind man and the elephant. You just touch or see one part and believe that that's the whole elephant. No, the contract elephant has so many different parts, and they are all important. Business people, when they talk about contracts, they might think of the signed document, but quite often the real deal is in the attachments, and those things go together and they need to go together. And we as lawyers, we see contracts differently from other people. We see the invisible terms. We ask questions that business people just don't really know exist. We wonder about what is and what is not part of the contract, what is implied, which country's law applies, and things like that. Now, one of the good things is that Italy and my country, Finland, has at least one law in common, many laws, but the CISG, the Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods, is the default rules for many, many important businesses and sales contracts. Over 3/4 of all world trade are actually done under this same law. So the invisible terms are the same for so many countries marked in dark blue here. And contract design for us lawyers is about showing the invisible as well as the visible. So one of the things is fostering contract literacy of people in business. What is contract design then? Easier to say what it is not than to say what it is. It's not just about designing in the mandatory rules and designing out those undesirable default rules. It's other things. It's not just about how contracts look. It's not an afterthought. It's not just about the legal piece of the puzzle. A lawyer fresh from law school might think that it's the legal piece that we are designing, but no, the picture needs to be the whole picture, and that needs to reflect the goals of the contract. Here's a recent book that came out 2 weeks ago by Edward Elgar. I was one of the co-editors. In this book, we talk about how contracts need to be designed and not just drafted. And for that, we need to aim at contracts that are user-friendly and legally functional. So not just one or the other, but both. If you're interested in the many different dimensions and layers of contract design, you can go and read one of the chapters. It's openly accessible on Edward Elgar's website. It's not just about the looks. It's also about the contents. And then and this is probably the most important thing, how they work and if they work and do they work. Unfortunately, experience and research tell us that current contracts don't work. At least if you have this in-house perspective, you see too many contracts underperform and end up in disputes. People don't read the contracts. Even sophisticated business people, they just don't have time to read those contracts if they are too complicated. Information is lost, misunderstood. Contracts are not implemented as intended, as expected. So unintentional non-compliance occurs. This is Stefania Pasera, part of her dissertation. She took this tenancy agreement for students and asked, is this actually working for young students making their first contract? And she did something about this because it doesn't work. There's many reasons for the problem and it has many names. The problem being that there's unnecessary information overload and readers give up. And if people don't read, the readers' problems become our problems as writers and lawyers as writers. People keep asking us the same questions repeatedly. We become the bottleneck. And readers' problems become our problems. We need better contracts that work for the readers, and we writers need help in producing such contracts. Now, is this new? No. It's not new. The problem has been around for at least 100 years. Fred Rodell already in 1936 says that there's two things wrong with almost all legal writing. One is its style and the other is its content. Now, two things should be easy to fix, but as we know, it's not. So contracts must change, and they can with design, we can actually change contracts. And how? Let me just get to the how. Proactive contract design, my title, is what I suggest as the answer to designing contracts that actually do work proactively, which for us in the field of proactive law, proactive contracting means two things. They promote good and they prevent harm. Are both legally and operationally functional. They help reach party goals, business goals, and they also help reach societal goals, fostering sustainable, responsible corporate behavior, even throughout the whole supply chain. And they communicate well, guide performance, and guide interpretation should a dispute arise. So they guide interpretation as the parties intended. So we write for the readers in the field, the business people in charge of implementation, so that they don't need to turn to pocket lawyers. We try to help them avoid legal trouble. But if legal trouble occurs, we also make sure that the contract communicates what it is intended to communicate. Proactive contract design is about contracting for better business outcomes, human-friendly and business-friendly. It's also called different things. It can also be called contracting for better societal outcomes. Sustainable contracting, responsible contracting, human rights contracting, climate conscious contracting. These are newer phenomena that we will be hearing more about in the future. And the good thing is that contracts, when they work, can work for both these outcomes. Now, is this new? It's not new. Even after 1950s, when Lou Brown began with preventive law, there's been a number of things happening in the field of preventive law first, as this approach is known in the US, and then the Nordic School of Proactive Law, we set it up in 2004, the Proactive Think Tank in 2007, and then for us pioneers, design visualization has been the way to bring it to practice. And I thought that I'd share a few examples with you, rather than go into the theory development, how and what has impacted our thinking. There's various things like legal linguistics, legal informatics, design thinking, information design, service design, and so on. We have adopted ideas from those, but how do we do this and why do we do this? The goal is for the parties to achieve their goals and those of their collaboration, so that both parties achieve what they want to achieve. So we as lawyers need to be able to create a legally clear, legally robust framework for the implementation of those goals. And how do we get there? When do we want to get there? For example, and I've just picked a few examples from which I have picked my examples. In business, for example, if we want to engage small suppliers, we can't just approach them and give them 150 pages documents and say bid. They wouldn't be willing and able to spend time to bid. Or when we onboard new suppliers, new customers, or new employees, they just can't be expected to read the current contracts. We need better and different contracts, and we already have examples. Or when we want to promote ESG goals among employees or our supply chains, we need to do more, and we can. Now, how do we do that, and what does it look like? Contracts for better business outcomes. I have an example first from Canada. Rod Waller, the father of information design, and his team, we helped an oil and gas company in Canada who wanted to engage local suppliers. This is public procurement problem often, and also big companies hoping to have local suppliers work for them. So this company operated among First Nation communities, Aboriginal people, and they wanted to engage those people and local contractors. But the procurement processes were too complicated. People just wouldn't bid. Our team, Jenny Waller, Rob Waller, myself, and the client, we worked on the typical request for proposals, which was formal language, power relations. You must do this, and everything is confidential. And if you fail to do this, it was threatening rather than and friendly or encouraging. And the set was really too large set of documents, information scattered around, typical documents looking like this. And what we did to address the challenge was we turned genres from legally dictating what the supplier must do to treating the Mr. Supplier in a friendly way, helping them to bid on the project. So there's various things we did. One of the interesting things was that we took the text that was scattered around different documents and built user guides from them. There was a guide to invoicing with icons, timelines, when, where, how, key questions, so the supplier would easily find what to do, even document templates, so they would know they would get paid on time if they complied with the suggestions. Guide to reporting, what to do, when, and so on. Again, templates. And then making the language accessible through layering. Layering is one of my favorite patterns. It's a text pattern, but here's where we reflect on this project. If you're interested, cooperation through clarity, designing simplified contracts. We write about the project, and we have also collected the patterns that we used. Patterns that support strategic reading, like skimmable headings, section start pages, color coding, patterns that support explanation, timelines, exemplars, layer explanations, and various patterns. So if you're interested, patterns are ways to solve recurring communication problems in contracts. And we started to collect those patterns. I would recommend Rob Waller's article, Contract Design for Humans. Rob's webpages contain many treasures. This is really one of my favorites. Contract Design for Humans. Here's another one by Rob Waller. Shell, it was already mentioned. They wanted people to understand the contracts and get quicker to the contract. So they used visuals, simple actions showing how to do things. So both sides, sell side, buy side, would understand what to do. And the difference is really huge from the text only documents. Now, contracts for better social outcomes then. Comic contracts by Robert De Roy, Clement Gold, a well-known example for many, I'm sure, a South African food and beverage company. They employed people with specific requirements, people who wouldn't speak the language or who wouldn't read at all, or illiterate people. So they engaged Robert. Here's one of his first prototypes of comic contracts. And the parties are characters. It's not just a comic about a contract, it is the contract. The parties sign the contract, the comic as their contract. There's been various articles about it, some 2016 when Robert started, since then. And if we had more time, I could share more, but let's go to a newer one. Here's responsible sourcing of seafood, another example where comic contracts are provided for vessels that supply Thai Union to use with their crew. So migrant workers who wouldn't know their rights will know their rights when they see the pictures. There's few, not many words, and there's many pictures showing what happens if you get sick, if you hurt yourself. These things are, compared to the text only, so much more useful and helpful for vulnerable workers in this context. There will be an article. Keep an eye on contracts via comics, and also there's this Finnish Tampere Saris research group doing remarkable work, interdisciplinary work, investigating how comic style communication helps in legal and social welfare projects, work to image and graphic justice. You see Anne Ketola in action, translating policies or fire safety things to images. Even the quick drafts help so much to see quickly what's happening, what's required. And my final example, Human-Friendly Contracts by Stefania Passera. She took that student tenancy agreement and turned it into bullet points and icons, images, and tested them. And guess which ones tested better with the students? The ones that were visualized, of course. People would find the information, remember it, and they would even have, well, enjoy reading contracts. So we started to collect visuals plus text in contracts some 10 years ago, and we did various experiments. Then we got to the contract design pattern library, where World Commerce and Contracting, now earlier IACCM, the International Association for Contract and Commercial Management, engaged us to collect and share those patterns to contract communication problems. So if you're interested, you can go and look it up. It's free, openly accessible, and there's examples of different kinds of design patterns. Pattern families, we have 10. Emphasis, explainers, layering, layout, navigation, organizing, tone of voice, visuals. So there's even this you, we happening in business to business contracts, even not just part of the first part, kind of anymore. And one of the patterns is user guide format. So you can have a look at what it is, what problems it solves, and the best part, if you ask me, is the examples. Examples like Airbus, you can go and see their procurement and sales terms in the library as examples. Clause summaries, frequently asked questions type of headings help tremendously business people in the field, skimmable headings and so on. So if you're interested in this, then do go and check this pattern library. And I would like to conclude with just one statement by Tim Cummins, the CEO of ISCCM, now World CC. They have about 70,000 members all around the world. So it's a large organization, and they have been very supportive of our visualization efforts from early on. So Tim Cummins states that in just a few years, we will look back and wonder why it took so long to make our contracts intelligible to the mass of people they affect.
Thank you very much. Getting perfectly in time, 30 minutes. So any comments or question? Olympia?
First of all, thank you for this enlightening presentation and for being here in Cagliari. It's really a gift to have you here, and it's my question is concern the title of your book, in a sense, because what you said is you draw a portrait of a new kind of lawyer. So maybe we are going to face a new generation of lawyers that not only of contracts, but next generation of lawyers that need to be prepared to interact with other people, with other professionals, with other scientific fields. Do you think it's going to happen soon? And I think there is an evolution in this sense. What do you think?
Interesting question, and I'm afraid my pocket lawyer wouldn't agree with me, but sooner or later it will happen. I'm a believer in sooner. It has already started to happen, and legal technology and various other things are pushing towards that direction. And then when you see clients who absolutely love the new next generation contracts as compared to how they hate their text-only contracts, then clever lawyers, including my pocket lawyer, when the client wants to have different next generation contracts, then the lawyers will follow, no doubt. So yes, I am a believer. I don't know if it's next year or 2 years, but I believe there's funding, there's research going on in various places where we can develop the next generation lawyer who's prepared to help clients succeed and reach their business goals and also their societal goals.
Thank you so much for your presentation, very rich and inspiring. I'm wondering if you have a methodology for measure, because one of the most important tasks in this domain is to apply benchmarking and measure the testing. So the empirical part is super important. So how to measure the effectiveness of one technique with respect to the others, and how to have a scientific key performance indicators for do so. And because you presented many empirical studies, if you have some methodology to share with us. Thank you so much.
Here, my partner in crime, Stefania Facera, would be the right person to answer the question. She has done comparisons and benchmarking, and I know there's benchmarking going on, but unfortunately, in many projects, the clients are not prepared to pay for benchmarking yet. So we need to do research, academic research, to really show. And in the Thai case, for example, the Tampere Studies group is researching the outcomes with the real users. So when there is funding, I hope there will be also funding for future work in this area. I completely agree that we need key performance indicators, but the question is, do we as lawyers have them and use them for our current work? Too much of it is just, well, we see things and we don't measure if they work. So we need to learn again a new skill and work with other professions so we know how to do it, do the measures right and the measuring right.